If your heart burns for revival like mine, please like and subscribe. This story is based on real events and shows us God's power, so we can implore God. God do it again. And now our story, they called him ugly. Then he changed the world.
The story of Reverend James McGready and the Great Revival. In the summer of 1800, under the towering oaks of Logan County, Kentucky, a large, imposing man stood before a crowd that stretched as far as the eye could see. His presence was unforgettable, not for his beauty, but for the peculiar piercing force he carried. Reverend James McGready had a face some called hideous, with small eyes that seemed to burn right through you. His voice was coarse and trembled with intensity. His gestures were awkward, even strange. Yet people were drawn to him. Someone who looks like that must have something important to say. They whispered. And they were right. His voice, steeped in prayer and conviction, would ignite a spiritual wildfire that swept across the American frontier, marking the beginning of the Second Great Awakening. Early life and calling. James McGready was born in 1763 in Pennsylvania to Irish and Scottish immigrants, James and Jean McGready. Raised in a strict Calvinist home, young James showed deep spiritual sensitivity. His uncle recognized this and brought him back to Pennsylvania for theological training under Reverend John McMillan and Reverend Joseph Smith. At just 25 years old, McGready was licensed to preach by the Redstone Presbytery. His first pastorates in North Carolina, including Stony Creek and Haw River, were soon marked by a preaching style that left no soul untouched. Fellow minister Barton W. Stone recalled him as not prepossessing, yet his gravity and those piercing eyes carried enormous weight. His rough voice and unrefined manner made listeners feel like they were standing on the edge of eternity. Heaven and hell came alive in his sermons, and people couldn't stay away. A ministry of prayer and fire. McGready believed revival came only through fervent prayer and fasting. He didn't just preach it, he lived it. In one striking incident, he refused to pray over a meal following a funeral where attendees had been drinking excessively. His boldness revealed a deep commitment to spiritual purity. In 1796, after growing threats from opponents in North Carolina, McGready moved to the rugged frontier of Kentucky. There, he took charge of 3 small congregations, Gasper River, Red River, and Muddy River. That same year, he invited his people into a covenant. They would pray and fast monthly for revival. Few could have imagined what would come next. The fire falls. The first embers of revival sparked in May 1797, when a woman in his congregation came under deep conviction and was converted. Through that summer, spiritual hunger spread. But the turning point came in July 1800, at the Gasper River Meeting House. As McGready preached, the Spirit of God descended with power. People stopped working. They neglected their farms. They wept and cried out for mercy. All that mattered was eternity. It was the birth of the Great Revival of 1800. The camp meetings. Soon, McGready's camp meetings became the heartbeat of this revival. Families traveled 50 to 100 miles, on horseback, by wagon, even on foot, setting up tents around forest clearings. They came for 3 or 4 days of preaching, worship, and prayer. Attendance often reached 10,000 to 20,000 people. The atmosphere was electric, described as passing strange. Some fell to the ground as if dead, lying motionless for hours before rising with shouts of joy and deliverance. The transformation was unmistakable. One attendee remembered. Father McGready would so describe heaven, you could almost see its glories. And he would so array hell and its horrors, you'd think the lake of fire was opening beneath your feet. Opposition and controversy with revival came criticism. Drinking remained a problem, some states even banned alcohol sales near campgrounds. More divisively, McGready began licensing young uneducated exhorters, a move that clashed with the Presbyterian Church's traditional emphasis on classical education. This, along with doctrinal tensions, led to McGready's suspension in 1805 to 1806. He briefly joined the newly formed Cumberland Presbyterian Church in 1810, but returned to the Transylvania Presbytery by 1809, unwilling to part fully with his Calvinist roots. The final years. In 1806, McGready moved to Henderson County, Kentucky. Though the massive revivals began to wane, he remained faithful. He planted churches in southern Indiana and preached in Ohio. At a camp meeting near Evansville in the fall of 1816, McGready, now in declining health, rose to preach. His voice rang out with the same fire that had once shaken the wilderness. "I feel the Spirit as powerfully as I did 16 years ago," he declared. Just months later, in February 1817, he died at home. He was buried quietly, his final resting place unknown. Legacy. Reverend James McGready was not what the world would call attractive, polished, or refined. But he was something far more powerful, anointed. His appearance may have turned heads, but it was his message, born in prayer and drenched in eternity, that changed lives. His revival lit the fire for others, John McGee, Barton W. Stone, and the famous Cane Ridge revival that would follow. McGready reminds us that revival does not begin in strategy, style, or skill. It begins on our knees. In the hidden place. In the burdened heart of someone who believes God still moves. And move, he did.